Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast, presented by the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network, coming at you live on that YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bo. That is Brant. I know it's a hard thing to get us confused. Bo's got the mustache. Brant's got the orange hair. That way. Brant's got the orange hair. But anyway, Brant, we've talked about this a couple of times over the last several weeks, and I think partly it's been said over and over again that every episode we do is one of our favorite episodes. And I think part of that is because we're just getting so darn close to football. You know, training camps are in underswing now. We've got, CeeDee Lamb holding out and getting fined. We've got some things going on in the NFL world. We're starting to itch and get excited about, being back to football. And so every episode kind of feels like our favorite. But today genuinely is one of my favorite episodes. It's the opportunity for you and I to plant our flag on some guys that we think are going to have good seasons, good careers. It's guys that we can't leave drafts without owning today, Brant. So it's the boys episode for the Fatboyz.
Absolutely, it's the boys. Don't forget, we got the brawls. The training camp brawls have started back up. You had one in Houston. You had a little shoving match there in Kansas City. The brawls are back too, so it's always fun to see there in training camp. But yeah, it's open back up. Rookies have reported for most teams. I believe all teams at least have rookies, and then I think probably a good 50% of veterans have reported as well. But yeah, it's that time of year. Summer's starting to wrap up. And then it's really getting in. August 1st, we'll have our first real football game with the Chicago Bears that some people are extremely hallucinating on how well they may do. You and me had that conversation
little high
at work. Little high. I'm not saying they might not have a good year, but let's not exceed what we think is going to happen. It's still a rookie QB. But as always, my guys are always fun. And I do want to say that with these my guys, sometimes – like one of my guys, I'm not talking about for Dynasty. I know we're a Dynasty podcast. I'll make sure I reiterate of where I drafted him and his ADP and what kind of style of draft. But he's one guy that I've definitely, even in the Dynasty startups we've had, I've picked him late because of his age, and I really think he still has a few more years left in him. But let's get our bibs on.
Well, let's eat. All right. So anyway, Brant, like we alluded to before the intro, we're talking about the boys that we can't leave the drafts without, right? Those guys that we walk in and we're like, this boy is going to be on my fantasy roster. I've got to walk out of here with him. I'm willing to go around earlier than current ADPs suggest to make sure I go grab this player. It's somebody that I think I have to roster, whether it be a futures pick, which I know you wanted to get in there. So we both got one of those for dynasty purposes, or some guys that help you currently now. And I know you and I both kind of trended towards like the less obvious picks. Like we weren't sitting up here going, if I have the first overall pick, I want to own, Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson. Those are guys I can't, live without. But I wanted to throw you for a loop on this, Brant, and I think I'm going to here anyway. What is one player that you can't leave a draft with, but you're going to have to pick him in the first 2 rounds to have him?
Bijan Robinson. I really do. I expect a huge explosion from Bijan this year. The trickery's out. He's by far one of the best backs in the NFL. And he's year one in the pros. That's Bijan. That is one guy that man, and a lot of drafts this year I'm targeting. In my keeper league, I already have 2 trades out for him. I'm trying to get him. Yeah, that's Bijan Robinson. I could see him finishing easily as the RB1 this year, or at least competing and being a little closer than most times to CMC. But that's Bijan. The 101 is obviously in my mind in most drafts is CMC, unless it's a super flex that we're talking. But I think Bijan has to be really up there. That's one guy that I really consider at almost any draft pick in normal drafts.
Yeah, for me, Brant, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. It's a guy that I think, there's a lot of relative unknowns out there, but he's got a good quarterback to be paired with, a quarterback who's starving for a weapon, an offense that's starving for a big play threat, a city that hasn't had a good wide receiver to hang its hat on since Larry Fitzgerald hung up the cleats. I'm really excited about Marvin Harrison. I do think there's big expectations for him year one. I do think there's a world in which he gets to be a top 12 wide receiver in year one, but I think it's going to be one of those guys that just year in and year out puts up crazy fantasy numbers. And he's going to be one of those guys that if you pass on him in a dynasty startup in favor of somebody else who might have a better established name early, you may be kicking yourself 4 or 5 years down the road from now, Brant. So I just wanted to put you on the spot for that one a little bit. Kind of pick your brain, because I know you and I both tend to try to be a little bit different than the normal the rest of the, fantasy shows out there. I know there's hundreds of them to choose from at this point, but we don't want to come out and tell you guys and say the super easy names, even though one of us did just say Bijan Robinson. We try to give out a little thought. So I know these guys that we're going to talk about the rest of the show are going to be a little bit further down on there. So I just wanted to see where your brain was as far as those guys that you had to have early. Real quick, before we jump all the way into this, Brant, we do have Jennifer watching the podcast with us right now. Jennifer's here. She said she loves the My Guys episode. Jennifer, this is probably at least the 3rd or the 4th My Guys that you've been a part of, or at least watched with the Fatboyz. So we definitely appreciate you coming in and checking out who the guys are that we can't leave drafts with this year. And Brant, I know you're itching and ready to go, so I'll turn the mic to you, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jennifer, for sticking with us and listening to the boys. As we hit you with our boys, our My Guys this year. And I'm going to come right out. And this one is, this is a guy that I can't stop drafting in dynasty leagues as well. And he's going really late in dynasty leagues. I took him when I did his ADP. I took it in half-point PPR redraft league, and he's going as the 15th wide receiver off the board. And that's Mike Evans. He's like a 1-year rental guy, maybe 2 or 3 in dynasties. He's gone over 1,000 yards ever since he entered the league. He's never gone under 1,000 yards. He's finished top 15 in every single year except for 3 years. And the only 3 years he didn't finish top 15, he didn't play in all games. He only played in 15 games. And like I say, he's been over 1,000 yards in every year. What has really changed in that offense? The QB coach left or the OC left? But we know what's going to happen is White in the backfield. Mike Evans is the outside guy. Chris Godwin's sliding back into the slot a little more. So I do think that will take, some love away. But everyone knows how good Chris Godwin is in the slot. So you don't think teams are going to be for Chris Godwin sliding back into the slot? That's going to leave more open targets, I think, for Mike Evans, or more breakaway routes and bigger touchdowns for him. He's going as the 15th wide out off the board in half-point PPRs, 29th to 30th player. It actually fluctuated within like the 2 days I was looking at all my stats. It actually fluctuated already. And his upside that he always brings the upside. I know you have a hard time with this because you had him in one of his worst years he ever had, where he'd hang up a goose egg and then 40 and then a goose egg and then 27 and then a goose egg. So I know that you have a I hate this guy feeling with you, but his upside and he's gonna there's endless possibilities of him being a top 12 wideout again this year. And Evans is just a guy I cannot stop grabbing. I think we did 2 or 3 startups, and I think in 2 of the 3 I owned and have drafted Mike Evans. And he's actually my wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. And I was able to get him really, really late. And this guy has nothing but wide receiver 1 upside. I absolutely love Mike Evans this year.
Yeah, I was going to be really controversial, and I was going to come at you with the Chris Godwin take because I have gotten Chris Godwin in a lot of drafts. He's being drafted significantly later than Mike Evans, and I was going to come at you, and we were going to have a healthy debate. And the more I thought about it, Brant, the more I really like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans this year. Not saying I'm in love with the Tampa Bay offense or not. I just think there's a space where both of those two exist. And let's be honest, Mike Evans finds a way to get 1,000 yards every season. He finds a way. He just gets it done. It happens. Even on the season I had him that I didn't particularly love owning him, he still found a way to get those 30 or 1,000 yards receiving and 80 receptions over the course of the season. So even as a guy, like I said, that I didn't love that year, you can't hate on the production. So I don't have a problem with that being one of your boys for this season, a spot where you want to plant the flag. I'm going to come at you with one that I've talked about several times over this offseason, Brant. It's a guy that you and I have, I believe you'll co-endorse this one with me. It's a guy you and I co-own a league and went and traded for this player as one of our first acquisitions of that league. I'm talking about Rashee Rice, the second-year wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. And listen, Rashee Rice was one of my boys last year. Rashee Rice is one of my boys this year. He was a rookie that I wanted to own. I know you loved him last year as a rookie as well, Brant. And then all he did was come out and just be super effective last year. 102 targets, 79 receptions, 938 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns. In that half-point PPR redraft formula, like you talked about, he's like the 42nd wide receiver off the board, which I think is just absolutely insane because Brant, at the rate the NFL moves, I know it's okay to be scared of the collision that he was a part of, which was very dumb on his end. I don't know what it is about these young wide receivers that want to get behind fast cars and go extremely fast on them, but hopefully we see that stop happening as often as it is. But anyway, we know the league moves at a snail's pace. He's not getting suspended this year, so his value should be extremely high in a redraft. He's already like the target leader every day in training camp coming out of Kansas City, so I'm liking what I'm seeing this offseason. But what I liked even better than that, Brant, is what I saw last postseason from him. And I know most of us don't play fantasy football during the postseason, but Patrick Mahomes wants to win a Super Bowl almost every year he plays, and he's pretty good at doing that, Brant. But if you look at the postseason targets last season for Rashee Rice, he had in the wild card round, he had 12 targets from Patrick Mahomes. In the divisional round, he only had 4 targets, but then the AFC Championship, he bounces back up to 9 targets. And in the Super Bowl, he had 8 targets. This is a guy that Patrick Mahomes has established a ton of rapport with. This is a guy that Patrick Mahomes looks to. And it's not just the postseason. 8 games last season, Brant, he had over 6 targets. And then he had 5 more games with at least 5 targets. So, I mean, you're talking 13 games with at least 5 targets last season. As a rookie, I think that's impressive. I think it only continues to go up. I think the weapons are better this year in Kansas City with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. I just think Rashee Rice ends up being the number one out of these wideouts. And again, at some point, Travis Kelce is going to take that role in this Kansas City offense. That's like your grandpa's Corvette. You only drive it to and from, car shows, and then you put it back in the garage and you put the cover on it so it doesn't get dirty and dusty and dinged up. At some point, Travis Kelce is going to move to that in this offense. Obviously, I'm not saying it's this year. I'm not calling for that with Travis Kelce. But I do think there's a good chance Rashee Rice may lead the entire team in targets this year, Brant. I think 42 for him is just way too low. I think this is a guy, like I said, on the Hot Takes episode, I think there's a good chance he's a wide receiver 1 on the entire season.
Yeah, I absolutely love this take. Love this being one of your boys. You and me did talk. We went straight out. We love that the NFL moves at a snail's pace because it gets everything cheap. Rashee Rice this is the cheapest you're going to get him. Everyone's buying into that Xavier Worthy hype. the Hollywood Brown, if you even remembered he got traded there. A lot of people don't remember he even signed there. But this is the cheapest you're going to get Rice. And we saw it at the end of the year, how much he produces, how much Patrick Mahomes trusts him. And he's going to trust him going forward because last year they had the most drops in the NFL. But I think Rice only had 3 or 4 total.
Yeah, he had a few, not many.
He was just shaking off, that transitional rust. Rashee Rice is going to be a guy that's going to be absolutely fun to watch and growing forward. And this is the cheapest you're going to find him. And he's linked to the best quarterback in the NFL for at least the next couple of years. And I called it a few episodes ago where I do think Travis Kelce slows down his role this year. They drafted a new tight end this year. They have Noah Gray. They went out and signed Irv Smith. So they have all those tight ends on the roster. And I really do think that Kelce takes that slow step back. More of a leadership role. Hey, I'm going to get out there and watch this, guys. So I absolutely love this take, and I think Rashee Rice is going to be the future of the Kansas City receiving core. Excuse me. So my next one, this is one of my favorite things to do, is just sitting back and waiting on your second quarterback in a super flex league. And this guy, I think, could easily move up into the top 12 quarterbacks this year. But I took him in the Superflex PPR is where I looked at it. Dynasty Superflex PPR. That's Will Levis in Superflex leagues. You can sit back going as the 175th player off the board in Dynasty Superflex leagues, 24th quarterback and 24th quarterback and 175th player. Levis has all the weapons, all the fun that he could have moving forward with this team. They revamped the offensive line a little bit. They added Ridley and Boyd to the passing core, along with DeAndre Hopkins. You and me went and talked about this earlier today, that we think this could be one of the most underrated wide receiving cores in the NFL. And by the end of the year, you're going, they did have a top 5 wide receiving core there. And then they added Tony Pollard to go with Tajay Spears. Derrick Henry's out of town. This team is on the up and up to balance this offense out more and throw the ball a lot more. And Will Levis is a big body guy. I don't have his metrics with me right now, but you saw it in college at Kentucky, and you saw it last year a little bit. He has the mobility to get out and run a little bit and make plays with his legs. Now, he's not going to go out and rush for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns every single week like Jalen Hurts or anything, but this is a guy that's going to go out and maybe get you 30, 40 yards on the ground plus a first down or 2 and probably put up 300 yards with this huge arm. He finished as a top 24 quarterback in 6 of the 9 games he played last year. And like I said, this is a team that's going to be more balanced. Levis has a big arm. He's got great play-making ability. He could easily move into the top 15 quarterbacks for the future. Now, I'm not saying that this guy's going to be, winning you leagues or anything else. This is a guy that's going to be sitting there late in drafts going, this guy's just sitting here. Let me grab Will Levis. I messed up, and you and me have talked about this. I messed up in one of our startups where I was sitting there. I'm like, yeah, he's coming. And then I look on the board, and I was like, okay, I like this guy better. Let me take him real fast. And then I did it, and I missed out on Will Levis in one of our drafts, and I was devastated, and I went back out and made sure I got him in another one that I had. This is one of my favorite boys for this year and moving forward. I think Will Levis is going to have a great NFL career, and it starts this year there in Tennessee.
Yeah, Brant, 6'4", 229 pounds.
Thank you.
And yeah, you're right. Whether you love Will Levis's ability or not, you have to love that he's thrown it to Calvin Ridley. He's thrown it to Tyler Boyd. He's thrown it to DeAndre Hopkins, Tajay Spears, Tony Pollard, Chigo Okonkwo. The names are there. I mean, they're a little older, but man, some of these guys are still really, really good. This is a good receiving core. It's good pass catchers. And that's leaving Treylon Burks off, who, I know hasn't been anything great yet, but Treylon Burks was a first-round wide receiver who had a very prolific career at University of Arkansas, who still could be something someday in the NFL. It's a great receiving core for Will Levis. So again, like I said, all signs point to him he should be a top half quarterback So it'd definitely be interesting to see if he lives up to that potential this year or not, Brant.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm coming at you with a running back here, Brant. I told you I wanted to try to find one that I could get behind, that I could plant my flag in, and I was going to go with the one that I've talked about a lot this offseason, but I'm not. I'm coming at you with a guy I really haven't talked about a whole lot this offseason. And I think the reason why is because I only own him in just a very few spots. So I just don't think I was paying as much of attention to him as I should. But that's Ramondre Stevenson, Brant. He's coming off the board as the 21st running back off the board. 26 years old, 6 foot, 227 pounds. Listen, he got his money this offseason. I know Zeke was there last year and vultured a lot of touchdowns. And you know, the team added, I don't know, Antonio Gibson, who I know has been the cause of some arguments between the Fatboyz in the past. But I think both of you and I can admit Antonio Gibson never really lived up to his billing in the National Football League, and I don't think he really scares me all that much when it comes to Ramondre Stevenson. He's averaged 4.49 yards per carry over his 3 seasons. And listen, we'd be lying to ourselves if we said that we didn't think we're ushering in a new era of Patriot football. You know, for the first time in 100 years, Brant, there's no Tom Brady, nor is there any Bill Belichick. So definitely going to be some differences. We don't really know what Gerard Mayo is going to do as far as his play calling, but I do know one thing, whether it's Jacoby Brissett under center, or it's the rookie Drake May, or even the rookie Joe Milton, who I think is ultimately very talented as well on that roster. One thing I do know for sure, Brant, is the pass catchers still are very unproven in New England, and I know Ramondre Stevenson could be a workhorse running back for this team. When you talk about playing the Miami Dolphins twice, when you talk about playing the Buffalo Bills twice, when you talk about playing Aaron Rodgers potentially twice, those are all 3 teams that you're going to want to try to slow down, keep the ball out of their hands a little bit. You're going to want to salt the game away a little bit with Ramondre Stevenson. And here's the thing. Last year, Brant, he only played in 12 games, only had 156 carries, 619 yards, 4 touchdowns. The touchdown equity just really wasn't there for him last year. I think his career high in touchdowns is only 5, so he's really not like a super touchdown-dependent guy. But he did have 51 targets, 38 receptions, 238 yards receiving last year. He's a do-it-all back, okay? So it's not like Antonio Gibson's going to come in there and steal all the passing game work. It's just not going to happen that way. Here's what I thought was interesting as I was diving a little bit deeper on Ramondre Stevenson, Brant. 7 out of the 9 games in which he had over 60%. So in other words, if he's got 60% of the snaps or better, 7 times that he did that, it resulted in RB 20 or better finishes. And 3 of those weeks being RB 7 or better. So he still had a really good season last year. It's just he missed a good chunk of time. I think if you add those 4 games back into it, you're talking about him being a top 20 running back pretty easily on the season last year, even with Zeke, who I think is still a bigger threat to fantasy value at this point in his career versus Gibson, just because of the touchdown vultures. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see double-digit touchdowns for Ramondre Stevenson this year, just because I think that offense is going to be so down. And I think you're going to see them try to keep, Ramondre Stevenson on the field as a safety blanket for Drake May when he ultimately does take over this team, and whether that's week 1 or week 10. And then I think ultimately for Jacoby Brissett out there as well. Just because, like I said, that the lack of weapons on that team with Demario Douglas and Tyquan Thornton and Javon Baker and Jalen Polk and Juju Smith. I mean, none of those guys are wide receiver 1s, Brant. They're just not. I mean, maybe one of them comes out and proves that, that they are later this season, but right now I can't say any of those guys are those things. And so I think that's why there's so much value for Ramondre Stevenson for me. And again, up until tonight, I don't know that I really felt this way about him, but I sat down and I really was like, I want to look at one of these running backs. I want to look at one that I have a little bit of share in. And it was like, man, how did I not even consider this prior to tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the team that's going to be trailing a lot this year. And so the pass catcher will be there. He's the best pass blocking back they have, so they're going to want to keep him on the field. Not to mention, like you said, everyone in the division. What are you going to do? you may see them run the ball 70% of the time, just trying to keep the ball out of people's hands. And this is a guy, he's Derrick Henry-esque. He touches the ball and he's going to fall forward for a yard or two. He's going to move the ball a little bit, if not, a lot. So it's a guy that they're going to constantly want to feed. And 20, 25 touches a game for him is not out of the realm. This is an absolutely great guy to go out and grab. And where'd you say he was being drafted out?
He's the 21st running back off the board. 80.2 is his ADP.
Yeah, and I don't see why he doesn't finish inside running back, inside the top 20 of running backs this year. So this is an absolute steal in drafts.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here we go. We're going to talk about our future boys here. My future boy is little yin and yang for what I got with you last week. I gave you a boom last week and one of the players that he has to beat out. And I'm reading a lot into him. And he may already start beating him out already. And that is Tyron Tracy, the 24-year-old running back out of Purdue, transferred from wide receiver. I feel like you and me have argued and talked about a guy that transferred from wide receiver to running back that you may have just mentioned in the last boy you were talking about there. We did. We had arguments with Antonio Gibson, who was in the same boat when he came out of college. But Tracy came out, and he already has great route running ability. He already has good hands. And he only has to beat out Devin Singletary. And I know I said Devin Singletary could be a boom this year. And I still believe that he can. Tyron Tracy's already talking about in camp taking over third down, pass catching back rolls. This guy has great hands. I didn't realize how big he really was. He's 5'11", 210 pounds. Like, he's able to shoulder quite a bit of a load there for running backs.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, he's already seeing time. He's already seen time as a third down pass back. He should be able to handle a pretty good workload. He's going as the 190th player off the board in dynasty startup leagues. 190th. This is a late, 19th, 18th, 19th dart throw. He could end up as an RB1 on a team that is just looking for an RB1. And Singletary's already been beat out by a rookie a few years ago, if you think about it. Going late in the draft, this could be the future in New York. They're already looking at the young receivers there with Malik Neighbors. They may want to see what they have in this Tracy just to see if, hey, we can bypass getting a new running back. We have this young guy under contract. He's been a backup for the last couple of years, so we don't have to pay him a whole lot. Tyron Tracy's a guy that I'm definitely keeping my eye on. We finished up a draft earlier, and that was the first message I sent out. I go, let's talk about Tracy. Unfortunately, the guy that took Tracy was also the one that took Singletary, so talks ended up going poof, gone, because I wanted Tracy, and he didn't want to give up his handcuff. But this is a guy that could easily take over this backfield a lot sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I think too, Brant, something that also will play into that as a factor is not saying that this exists a whole lot, but I think it'd be crazy not to acknowledge it, right? The Giants are on the offseason show Hard Knocks this year. We've seen the fumble of them trying to negotiate a contract with Saquon Barkley, who ultimately ended up going to division rival Philadelphia. It wouldn't shock me at all for the Giants to try super hard to replace Saquon Barkley with another guy that fans can rush out and buy jerseys and have to look forward to it. And if it's not Devin Singletary and it's not Gray from last year, maybe it is Tracy, and maybe they're going to give him a chance and get him out there and let him see what they have in him. Just because I made the hot take that I think Daniel Jones gets benched halfway through this season in favor of Drew Lock. I still think that's the case. But obviously, if you're playing bad enough that your starting quarterback gets benched, you're probably not in playoff contention. So what stops you from looking and seeing what you have in some of these other players? So I definitely think there's a strong possibility that, you see the Giants trot him out there at different points of the year to see what they have in him, Brant. All right. Before I jump in, we got David with us. David says, what's up? David, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in with us. It's always good to have you guys in here with us. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put this to Jennifer and David and anybody else that's watching. What do you guys predict the Chicago Bears record to be this year? Brant and I found ourselves in a very heated debate today at work with a Chicago Bears fan. Obviously, Brant and I both live in Bear country here in Illinois, but we're curious to see what other people think about the Chicago Bears this year. So if you go out and check that schedule out, come back to us and tell us what you think while I'm going over my future selection. And my future guy, Brant, is also a future guy that I think has an outside chance to be a now contributor as well. And that's Jatavion Sanders out of the University of Texas. 6'4", 252 pounds, 21 years of age. He went in the 4th round to the Carolina Panthers. He is currently, Brant, you thought it was cute talking about Tracy's ADP. Jatavion Sanders is currently the 195th player off the board in Dynasty startups. So just a few picks behind Mr. Tracy there. But again, when you talk about this Carolina Panthers offense, Brant, outside of, Adam Thielen, there's really nothing proven here. I do think Xavier Legette will be good. I do think Deontay Johnson obviously is the focal point of that offense, in my opinion. But they don't have a really great tight end on that roster. And, Bryce Young's still kind of a rookie in my book because he didn't have a really great rookie year. He didn't really have a great coaching situation. Now he's moving on this year with Dave Canales, who has gotten the best out of a couple of quarterbacks in years past, with Baker last year and Geno the year before that in Seattle. So it'll be interesting to see if Bryce Young's able to take a step forward. And if he does, a lot of his weapons are going to benefit. But at the very least, Jatavion Sanders is going to grow with Bryce Young over the next couple of years. And I think he ultimately works his way into being a pretty relevant tight end. In his 2 years at college, Brant, he was kind of one of those guys that, initially, like in 2022, he was kind of a possession tight end. 13 games played, 54 receptions, 613 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns, 11.4 yards per catch. So, just what you'd expect out of your tight end, somebody that gets in front of the sticks, turns around, sits down, and waits for the ball, get you that first down. However, in 2023, last year, 14 games played, only 45 receptions, so they dropped a little bit. 682 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, 15.2 yards per catch. So his yards were better and his yards per catch were better in 2023. And I know people are looking at this going, well, that's not really all that impressive. Yeah, it's really not. But when you consider the amount of NFL players that have come out of that University of Texas Longhorns offense the last 2 years, you've got last year, Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson out of the backfield. This year, you got Jonathan Brooks, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell. There's been some names come out of this offense the last year where Quinn Ewers was kind of able to spread the ball around. He didn't have to hyper target one guy. And that's not necessarily going to be the case in Carolina. There's going to be times where, hey, listen, you're playing, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who've got a great secondary, and they're taking out, Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette, and you've got to look somewhere else. So you work the middle of the field, and you've got guys like Jatavion Sanders standing there catching the ball. So I'm very excited about Jatavion Sanders, both again as a rookie, but also as his career expands, Brant. And again, this is another player that you and I made sure we didn't leave our combined draft without having. It was a guy that we wanted to have, and that was a tight end premium league. So even more reason to have him. But I just think there's a chance this guy ends up being a big part of this Carolina Panthers offense moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And he gets to grow with Bryce Young. As you said, Bryce Young's entering his second year. So they do have a lot of young targets there, and he'll be the first one. Needless to say, he may have the leg up to play more time than a lot of the younger guys this year. Maybe Brooks may be the only one that can play a little more if he gets off the pup in time. But that's about it. And so he gets to grow with year one out of the gate with him and develop that chemistry. I absolutely love Sanders this year. Like you said, we made sure we went out and got him. Definitely going to be a guy that's going to be targeted a lot late in drafts.
Absolutely.
So that does it for the boys episode this week. The next 2 weeks will be a little hit and miss. I am going on vacation. This fat boy is going on his 2-week vacation for the year. So hopefully we're able to do something while I'm gone, maybe one day or before I leave. And then I know we talked about possibly trying to get something together with maybe another guy in the Fantasy Holics. So hopefully we're able to get something out. Maybe I can chime in. I'll have my tablet and my earbuds with me, and hopefully we'll be able to get something. I may not be the greatest on camera, but who says I am anyways when the camera's
you're
in
not.
full definition.
You're not.
So the camera may not be the greatest, but I will do my best to get with you guys. Football season's right around the corner.
43 days, Brant. 43 days until the Thursday night kickoff. But who's counting?
Everybody is counting. Everybody is counting. I've got the Seahawks page up on the Facebook that takes players' numbers, and I haven't looked today, and they'll be like, "Oh, this many days." So everybody is counting. It's that time of year. It's coming.
Absolutely.
So as always, stay hungry.
And stay fat, my friends.